Life is good. We're safe, and at times it's very relaxing. That's what's so great about this country. But there's a reason all of what I just said is true. Some take it for granted, others could care less. Me? I thank 'em every chance I get. This sea of white headstones can be found in most major cities in America. I look out at a view like this and can't help but think of all those men who fought through hell. Some died on foreign soil, some came home. But every one of these headstones has a story to tell, with no one to tell it. All of these stories will go unheard for the rest of time. It's quiet here, but these headstones scream a million words for those who will listen. These were my heroes growing up. They didn't wear spandex, a cape. Hell, their underwear was underneath their pants. If it wasn't for the greatest generation, we would all be speaking Japanese or German. That's why telling the stories of those we have left is so beyond important to me. We are losing these heroes too rapidly. So my mission is to sit down with as many as I can, to let these unsung heroes have their chance to be heard, before it's too late.
I was with the 4th Marine Division, attached to, we call it the 10th Amtrack Battalion. And after the war was over, if people had a Japanese car, it usually got keyed. You know. Pearl Harbor happened. I was working at Eastman Kodak, and we were building timers for anti-aircraft shells. And then we came back to California and to San Diego. My father was born at the turn of the century, and he re-enlisted in the Marine Corps. He was 42 then, 41, 42. And they never sent him overseas because they're in their 40s. And he kept, I want to enlist, I want to enlist. He says, you wait until you get your draft notice, then you can enlist. So one day, I was working at Consolidated Aircraft. We were building B-24 bombers. I was sitting there having lunch outside, and a truckload of Marines went by, and they said, hooray for the home front. It really ticked me off. I said, damn it, Dad, I want to enlist. Okay, go ahead, you're going to get drafted anyway. So I went down and I enlisted, went through boot camp in San Diego at the Marine Corps Recruit Depot. Then we transferred us up to Camp Delmar. At that time it was called the Boat Basin, and I was attached to the 10th Amphibian Tractor Battalion. Well, I was really excited. I was so proud to be a Marine, and I went through it fine, you know. Well, what I did one time is, at that time I smoked, not very much. A pack of cigarettes would last me a week. We didn't know then how bad they were for you. So I took my cigarette out and I threw it on the ground in front of the drill instructor. And he said, Austin, come over here. I said, yes, sir. He says, get your sewing kit. We had little sewing kits. And he says, take out a needle and a thread that's the same height as you are, and I want you to go around camp and fill that up with cigarette butts. Well, no. Everybody field stripped their cigarettes. They tore the paper off and spread the ashes out, you know. And it took me all night. I went to the PX and scrounged cigarette butts out of the ashtrays. So that was my first discipline, the only one I ever had. So we trained, we got these Amtracks called alligators, and they had used them in Guadalcanal, and they were terrible. you turned too tight and the track would come off. So then they came along with the water buffalo, but the problem was there was no ramp. You had to climb over the side of it, and you held a platoon of infantry, 25 guys. And we were armed with two 30 caliber machine guns, a 50 caliber machine gun, and I had 24 rockets, 12 rockets on each, two racks with 12 4.5 rockets. So after a year of training, we went to Hawaii, and we were on the island of Maui, and that was our main base. And of course we lived in 6-man tents. All the time I was in the Marine Corps, I never lived in a barracks, always in a tent. So then we'd go out on maneuvers, and then we came back, and then we went overseas. And they didn't tell you where you're going to land. Well, we're going to land in the Marshall Islands. And the Marshall Islands are like if you took a strand of pearls and threw them out. There's little tiny islands all the way around. And in the center was a good anchorage for ships. So we get there and we disembark. We traveled on LSTs. Are you familiar with those? With the bow doors that open and the ramp that comes down. And you're a couple thousand yards from shore. So we take off. I'm in the first assault wave. And we hit the beach of this little island. And a lot of excitement. And, you know, you were uptight a little bit. But so we land on this little island, and there's probably 8 Japanese on it. And I'm shooting the hell out of everything. They had a blockhouse there, and I didn't even see a Japanese. So the next day we're going to hit the main island. So I can't remember. Yeah, we bivouacked on that island, I think. And then we invaded this island. I was in the first assault wave. And my one crewman was behind a 50, I was behind a 30. And the other crewman was behind a 30, and he was controlling the rockets. And my one crewman got shot through the chest, and it knocked him against the other crewman, and he fell against the drive shaft, and he was kind of paralyzed for a little bit. So one of the infantry guys grabbed that gun, and he was closer than you are, then he took a round through the head here and left a hole about that big around, and I wiped the blood off of me. I thought I was hit, you know. Well, the Japanese had these bottles of gas, like Molotov cocktails, and they were throwing them on the side of my Amtrack. And of course, they didn't cause any damage to speak of. And the Japanese were so close, I couldn't aim my guns at them because my guns were up high. But the infantry took care of them, and it was a really fast, furious battle. And the crazy fools would come charging at you. But in those days, those first Amtracks we had, you were exposed from your chest up. The next one we got was I think the water buffalo, and it had gun shields on them, and they were much better. Well, when the battle was over and we cleaned up all these islands, I had taken these wounded out. I got some infantry guys. I climbed out when the shooting stopped. I took these wounded out, and I started back into shore, and my Amtrack was listing. Well, I had to kind of corkscrew. I had no control over the steering until I got to the coral, and then I straightened out, and I climbed out, and the whole side was just full of bullet holes. So that then I had rations to take to one of the islands, and I pulled a squall came up, and I pulled up to this island, and all of a sudden some Marines come running out. Where the hell have you been? And I said, well, I'm taking these rations to the main island. What are you doing? He says, we've been stuck on this island for 10 days. He said, without any food. I said, well, couldn't you radio him? He says, our radio man fell in the water and shorted it out. We have no, and they forgot about us. So they were eating coconuts, and they were green, and they got dysentery. So they said, we want these rations. I said, no, you can't have them. And he said, the hell we can't. So they were like locusts. They climbed all over. And so I couldn't take them all, so I took the main guy to the main island, and I don't know what happened from then on. So after it was all over, this colonel that was of the 1st Raider Battalion in Guadalcanal, I said, well, Colonel, how do we do? He says, I'm really proud of you men. I says, we get to go home now, and they'll have a parade for us. And he said, you're here for the duration of the war. He says, and consider this child's play. You ain't seen nothing yet. And holy God, I thought. So we went back to Maui, then we trained, and then we came out and hit Saipan. First assault wave again. Every damn time I got the first assault wave. Well, this time, we were not supposed to stop at the beach. We were to go inland so many yards and set up a perimeter of defense and wait till the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th wave caught up to us. Well, there was a sugarcane field in a little town called Chelan and Kanoa, and it had a cement wall around it, and the Amtracks couldn't get over it. So we got up, only 3 of us got up to this base. So at the base there was a big hill, and the Japanese could throw hand grenades at us and shoot down on us. And the lieutenant in charge of the infantry said, you guys are just drawing a lot of fire. Get the hell out of here. So I had a choice of a rice paddy, which I knew I could get stuck in. I had a choice of a sugarcane field or the road. And I said, I'm taking the road. And the other guy said, Sarge, you're not going to take that road. It's mine. I said, I'm making the decision. We're taking the damn road. He says, but they'll have it mined. I says, I don't think they've had time to do that. So we hauled ass down this road, and the artillery shells and mortars were getting closer and closer. And finally, we get almost to the beach, and then we're getting friendly fire. So I thought, holy Jesus. So anyway, then I like to stay away from the infantry, but they say there's a machine gun that's up there and it's out, and we're exposed. So I want you to drive so we can run behind you. So that's what they did, and of course both of our, one machine gun we couldn't use because it was in the back, were blazing away, and we knock out the machine gun nest, and then we would pick up the wounded and take them out to the ships. So after Saipan, we looked over, and there's Tinian, and we knew that we were going to hit it. So we got lined up, first assault wave again, and one of the guys, there was a ship mine, they're huge, you know, and it had floated in close to shore, and he hit that, and we never found a part of it. Well, we landed on Tinian, and the same thing, take the wounded out, bring in ammunition, and once in a while help them, the infantry. They could follow us for protection, and we'd fire our guns, and then they'd take over from there. So then that one night, we got a prisoner of war, and he said they were going to have a big Banzai attack. So we set up a crossfire of machine guns. I took the machine guns off of my Amtrack, and we had tripods before they were on a rail, and set up this perimeter of defense. And we had barbed wire that we sprung out that was round. And the Navy was dropping parachute flares, and they said, do not fire until you get the word. So all of a sudden, I'm thinking, I want to fire so bad. But if you did, they'd locate your position, and you're a dead duck. So then all of a sudden, open fire, and I don't know how many they killed, but probably 500. And we lost 5 guys because we were well protected, and they were just, and some of them had sticks with bayonets tied to them. I couldn't believe it, some of the dead ones. So anyway, we stayed there on that island, and I think it took 28 days or something like that. Saipan took about 30 days. Going back to Saipan, I never saw it myself, but the Japanese said, this is what I heard. To become a Marine, you had to either kill your mother or your father. And if you got captured, they told us, the Japanese told us to the civilian, if you get captured by the Marines, they'll use your babies for bayonet practice, and they'll rape your women and torture your men. Well, they were a curiosity to us, you know. Well, I was out on patrol. I left my Amtrack, and they needed some backup, and we weren't doing much then. And I came upon a Japanese that was born in America, and he was an interpreter. And he had the American flag all over him on his back, on his helmet. And he said, what the hell are you guys doing here? You're scaring these civilians. We didn't know it, you know, we were on patrol. So he said, it wasn't funny actually, that these civilians were throwing themselves off the cliff, and they were, and they got, I never saw it, but they had photographs, I've seen it, where this woman is carrying this baby, and she threw it off the cliff, and she jumped on it after. And they said something like 1,000 jumped off of that cliff because they were so scared of us. Well, they had a compound where they kept all the civilians, and when they found out how well we treated them, they were just beside themselves, you know. And one night, I was on guard duty. We were back from, of course, you go up to the front lines and go and unload ammo and come back and then take the wounded out, and that was our job. Well, they said, you're on gun watch tonight. I want you to set your gun up here. So I drove my Amtrack up there and took the guns off and set them up. And there was word going around that the Japanese were using poison gas. So I'm sitting there, and every once in a while a mortar would fly into our outfit and explode. Well, one of them hit the ground and went up, made a pop, and shh, I hear this, and I see this white smoke. And I gave the alarm, gas attack, gas attack. Well, all these guys that were bivouacked up there had their Amtracks down below with their gas masks in their Amtracks. So I was on top, so I had mine. So our crew puts them on, and I remember the one guy, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. I said, stupid, take the tape off the bottom of the canister. So they all went down this hill and ran into this coral, and they were barefooted because they were out there camped, bivouacked out there. And I was very, very unpopular. What it was a smoke grenade, this smoke mortar, and that would send out the smoke so you couldn't see where the enemy was, So
It was the cover.
They told me till the last day about that. And the casualties on Saipan, I think there was over 3,000 killed and about 20 to 25,000 wounded. Well, I had this one kid that was shot through the neck, and right through here, and another one that was shot and it hit the bone in his arm here. And I had about 4 or 5 guys with shrapnel in them. And there were so many casualties that the ships couldn't take them all. So I pull up the ship. We can't take any more. Go to that ship. I go to that ship. No, you can't take any. And this one kid is going to go into shock. And I couldn't give him morphine because of a neck wound. You can't give it for a neck wound or a head wound or a stomach wound, I guess. I don't know. They look like a little tube of toothpaste. Well, anyway, I pulled up to this destroyer, and I said, I got wounded. He said, we can't take any more. I said, you're going to take them or I'm going to blow your damn ship out of the water. And what I did is I jumped up and I armed the .50 caliber. Of course, I never would. In about 30 seconds, I had 50 carbines for these Navy guys. Get away from that gun. So I said, yes, sir, I'm sorry. So they took them, and then we went back in, and I had to load up, went to this LST and loaded up with machine gun bullets and all that stuff. And it had turned dark, and I was heading for the beach. And the beach was a solid mass of artillery explosions. And what had happened is our Navy went out to meet a Japanese flotilla that was going to counteract and land on the island, And that's when they had that Mariana turkey shoot. I don't know if you ever heard of that or not, where they slaughtered the Japanese and sunk a lot of their ships. The kill ratio there was about 10 Jap airplanes to 1 American. And I couldn't find a place to land on the beach. Well, the Navy was our support, So I finally said, God, I don't want to run over somebody. So we finally got to the beach, and you'd think I could have sat out there in the ocean till daylight, but you don't even think about that because of the way you're trained. So I waited a little bit, and then I went in. And my crewman says, yeah, we can make it, okay. So we got in, and we had barbed wire, and I had to unload this barbed wire. And I picked it up with my bare hands and threw it off the Amtrack, and cases of .30 caliber bullets, and threw those off and just wanted to get the hell out of there. And I was driving, I always drove. I was driving and my hands start burning, and I looked down and they were solid massive cuts from grabbing that barbed wire and throwing it off. It was in big rolls about 4 feet big. And so then we went back to Maui and got new Amtracks with a ramp in the back. That was the safest thing they ever had. They had a 250 horsepower radial engine in them, and an airplane engine actually. But the ramp was nice. They could be protected like the Higgins boats and the small boats. When they land, that ramp drops down. If there's a machine gun there, they just mow them down, you know. This way they had some protection. So we get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, the day before they told us we were going to hit the island of Iwo Jima. And the island was 8 square miles. And we were going to be there for 3 days. And we were going to go on to Okinawa. And they said the whole operation, because it's only 8 square miles, will only take about a week. I woke up in the morning, and you're laying in your bunk at night. And so anyway, go to the tank deck, and the sound of the chain dropping on the steel deck, and they had these huge fans. It was blowing, sucking up moo, and then sucking up the carbon monoxide because we started all the Amtracks up. Then here comes the infantry, and they climb aboard. And the lieutenant says, okay, you guys, arm your weapons, but put them on safety. So everybody did. Now this was going to be 3 days. So we take off at, I don't know, it's still dark. We go out and we rendezvous until everybody on all of the Amtrak, the LSTs are disembarked, and then they form the first assault wave. And then we hit the beach. And the fires. Now a lot of people said they waited till the 4th and 5th wave got in. But I didn't see any of that because they were just shelling the hell out of us, mortars and everything. And the Japanese commander on Iwo Jima was a really smart guy. He dug 14 miles of tunnels, and he didn't do any banzai attacks, which in one way everybody looked forward to him. Not really looked forward to him, but they knew that they could get it over with in a hurry if they wanted to sacrifice themselves. So we got the ramp in the back. Well, my ramp wouldn't go down, and the shells are murderous, and they're cussing at me, you know, like I said, I'm working on it. So I finally got the thing to go down, and the lieutenant said, don't covey up like a bunch of damn quail. Now spread out. Well, they got out, and there was a bomb crater next to me, and they all went into that bomb crater, took a direct hit, killed all of them, killed the 25 guys that I brought into the beach. And I lived with that for a lot of years. But it's just one of those things that happened. And there was between 6,000 and 7,000 Marines killed, and there was 30,000 casualties. So 1 man out of every 3 was a casualty. And it was just horrible. And they were there for over a month before. And of course I'm bringing ammunition in, and I'm bringing ammo in, and once in a while I'd go out and they'd infantry guys say, we need you, and you'd help knock out a machine gun nest. But I said, damn it, the Sherman tanks are supposed to do this, not us. Well, that's a story in itself. there was a Sherman tank in the Marshall Islands, and there was a big Indian. I think he was a Navajo, and I hadn't seen too many Sherman tanks, and I said, what's your name? He said, just call me Chief. I said, boy, I like this tank. He said, come on aboard, look it over. So I climbed aboard it. And wow. So then I left. Then I saw him on Saipan. And I said, hey, Chief, you remember me? He said, yeah, I remember you. And then I saw him on Tinian. And then I saw him on Iwo Jima. And he says to me, I was looking for you. I said, you were? I was looking for you. Because I didn't even know the guy, except that for 5 minutes I knew you better than I did him. And he says, I figured if I saw you, I was going to make it. And that's exactly the way I felt about him. It was just one of those crazy things, So I couldn't even tell you what happened to my Amtrack after we left Iwo Jima. But I just don't know. I can't remember that.
So but, tell me about the flag being raised.
Oh, okay. I was in a bomb crater, and I was watching the 5th Marine climb up Mount Suribachi. They weren't getting a lot of heavy fire, and they got up there, and I had my binoculars on, and I couldn't see them, but I could see the flag when it went up. And somebody hollered, the flag, the flag. And they start shooting in the air. Well, they thought the war was over, and it was the raising of the flag. And I knew Charles Lindbergh, he raised the first flag, and it was too small. And what really pisses me off, and that's the only word I can use, people said, that was a posed picture. And I said, no, it wasn't a posed picture. I couldn't exactly prove that, but the photographer that took the picture said, if I was going to take a posed picture, I wouldn't be showing their backs. I'd be showing their fronts, like the picture up there, So that was great. And the reason was we were getting a lot of accurate artillery and mortar shells because these observers were on the top of this mountain and they could look right down at the beach, So that's what I remember about it. Remember it going up and seeing it up there.
So were you in the Amtrack the whole time at Iwo Jima, or did you get out? Were you on the ground at all?
Yeah, I was on the ground a lot, getting guys that were wounded and getting them. Then they set up an aid station on the beach. And let's see, what else can I tell you about it?
You told me one time about the time you were in the pillbox, or you were...
what happened is the Sherman tank got knocked out, and it was in this bomb crater, and it was halfway down the crater tipped sideways, and they were shelling us pretty heavy. So I'd go down to the bottom, I'd look at that tank, and it would shudder, and I thought, oh, it's going to tip over on me. So I'd go up to the lip of the crater, and then the shrapnel was just all over the place, So then I'd go back down, and I wore myself out, and I finally got out of there. And while we were there, a B-29 landed that had been over Tokyo, and it was shot up a little bit, but it was still very flyable. And he landed, and I always remember the name on it was Dynamite. So obviously the gal's name was Dinah, and he put mite on the end of it, I guess. Well, we're up there looking at it, and this officer comes up and says, Well, I'll tell you, you guys better get out of here. They're 100 yards away. It's not secure. They're going to start shelling you. So they said something about one of the engine was giving them a little trouble, and they thought they'd land and see if something that was fixable. So they took off. And I think it was about 10 years ago, I was going through Yuma, where all those World War II planes were stored, you know, and there was dynamite sitting there. It sent shock waves through me, you know. It really did. But I keep jumping back and forth. But anyway, on Saipan, the USS Indianapolis, that heavy cruiser, pulled in, and I believe at the time, nobody knew it, they were unloading parts of the atomic bomb. Well, I decided, God, they got a lot of good food. We're eating sea ration. So where we were bivouacked, there was a cave, and in the cave was cases of Japanese wine and sake. So I said, I'm going to do some trading. So my crew and I loaded that Amtrack up, went out to USS Indianapolis. To get his attention, I got this sailor and I threw him a bottle, and I'll be damned he caught it. And he says, what is it? I said, it's wine. I said, can you get your cook up here? I got some trading to do. He said, yeah, don't go away. So the cook comes up, and he's a kind of, looked like a boozer, and he had on one of those white hats, you know, that they wear. And he said, what do you got? And I said, I got cases of wine and sake. I said, I want to trade it for food. He says, don't go away. Don't stay right there. He brought us 5 or 6 big salamis, cans of fruit cocktail and pears and peaches and bread, and the crew is hauling it up with ropes. And we finally, the officer of the day came over and says, you men get back to your post, and you men get the hell out of here. So I was loaded with food. So I went in and shared it with our platoon and exonerated me for making the gas alarm tag, you know. Boy, we ate like savages. It was good. When we were on Iwo, you get the sea ration, you could bury it down in the volcanic ash and it would heat it up. Then you could eat it warm. But the death toll there, you actually had to step over the bodies. And my one crewman, Gonzalo Garcia, he was really a super guy. We were really good buddies. And we were up there, and they were shelling us pretty good. Well, all the roads were mined, and if you got off the road, you could run over a mine. So I told Garcia, I'm going to go down there and tell that tanker to move out of the way so we can get by. So he jumped off and he ran down there before I had a chance. And he came back, and he was from here to my kitchen, and he hollered, hey, Austin, and a mortar or artillery shell hit at his feet and just took him and looked like it pulled him apart like a rag doll, and he fell. So we all dove into a bomb crater. Of course, there was bomb craters all over the place. And I crawled out, and my one other crewman said, get your ass back in here. I said, Garcia got hit. He says, he didn't get hit, he's killed. So I waited till the shelling was up, and I went over there. Well, he had on my foul weather gear with my name and serial number on it. I thought, holy shit, they'll think it's me, you know. But then I looked, and he still had his dog tags on. So one thing that I regret He was from Los Angeles, and I went by his home to talk to his parents. And there was nobody home but his grandfather that didn't speak English. And I never went back, and I really should have. You know, they certainly would have liked to. No. The way I met them is when we formed our battalion, they didn't have any cooks, so they got guys to volunteer to cook. And they didn't really know what they were doing, and the food was not good at all. So he was sitting across on this bench from me, and he had a jar of, I'll always remember, El Pato chili peppers. And I said, "What are you doing with those?" He says, "I'm eating them." He said, "Try it. It makes the food taste better." So he gave me one, and he was right. So we became really buddies, and I got him transferred to my Amtrack. My Amtrack name was Phyllis, the name of my wife. At that time, she was my girlfriend. And it was so sad. And the death was, there was a place, a road that was safe, and it was probably from here farther than the street. It was a big ditch, and all these dead Marines were laying in there. And I used to have to take about 2 or 3 deep breaths and go like hell, because they couldn't bury them. There's too much heavy artillery and mortar fire. So then the war was over.
What was your guys' reactions when you heard about the atomic bomb?
Oh, we were amazed. One of the guys in our outfit, he's a pretty sharp guy. He says, "They got a bomb that's going to blow a whole city up." I said, "What are you, nuts? A bomb that'll blow the whole city up?" Now, where he got that information, I will never know.
What was your reaction when you heard about what happened to the USS Indianapolis?
I was very shocked. I just was dumbfounded. Captain McVeigh survived it, and they made a scapegoat out of him because the ones that survived backed him up 100%. He was supposed to be on a zigzag course, and I think he was heading for the Philippines, and that ship was so fast that he didn't go on a zigzag course, and then that's when that submarine sunk it. And they had actually had the captain of that submarine in court, and he said, "I would have sunk it whether it was on a zigzag course or not." Then that PBY float plane landed, and they climbed all over it. And they said some of the guys, they'd grab their hand and their arm and pull the skin right off. I think it was 5 days they were in the water.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. And the sharks, it seems like they said if they stayed in a circle and kicked their feet, but if you floated away, the sharks would attack you and kill you. Of course, the first thing is that can be miles away shark, and you can smell that blood.
Yeah.
You know, that was a shame that they had to do that. I had a customer when I was in the jewelry business, Mrs. McCrill, and her father was the captain of the USS Arizona, Captain Van Valkenburg. And she came in one day and showed me a letter she got from the Secretary of the Navy inviting to the ceremony when they opened up that, what do you call it?
The memorial?
The memorial, yeah. I kept looking for Garcia's name. I never could find it. I thought maybe he was buried in Hawaii, but he was my best friend. We got on liberties together. The guy had a beautiful voice, and he used to sing these songs in Spanish. We were aboard ship, he didn't have anything to do. And I would learn these songs in Spanish from listening to him. but he was a good guy. I'll tell you one other thing. When we landed on Iwo and disembarked, these guys all got killed, and we got the hell out of that Amtrack. We didn't have anything to do right then. And we got in a bomb crater, and there was a machine gun nest. And this one kid, Charlie Vasilaki, had never seen any action. And he says, "I thought you guys were battle worn." And one of my crewmen said, "Listen, you asshole." He says, "See that machine gun nest? Put a bayonet on your rifle and charge it and act like you're John Wayne." I said to him, "You want to stay alive, you follow us. If you want to get killed, go off and charge a machine gun nest, you dumbass." So, this ain't a movie, buddy. "Well, what are we doing here? I'm fighting for the United States." I says, "I'm fighting for my ass." I know. That's first. The country's second. There was a lot of things that I could go on and on about it. One more thing. We were in a bunker that's stretched from here to that fireplace, and it was filled, there was sandbags, and it was covered with steel plates that they used for landing strips when the landing strips weren't finished. And there was an entrance, and it was facing the sea. Well, the inside of that bunker smelled pretty bad because I think some body parts got into some of the sandbags. And I was right at the opening, so I had this fresh air. So one of our guys said, "Move over, Austin." I said, "Climb over me." He says, "Come on, get over." So I moved over. He took a 20 millimeter, I think it was a 20 millimeter shell right in the middle of his chest.
In the spot you were sitting in?
The spot where I was sitting. And, oh, Jesus. And I was standing next to a Jeep and a armor-piercing Navy. Because, you know, there was a lot of friendly fire because they went through my jacket right at my waist, went through the radiator of the Jeep, pierced the engine, and ended up dead outside on the dirt. And I went over and I picked it up. It was an armor piercing, and I threw it back down. I wish I'd have kept it. That was pretty close. And there was a lot of close. And I felt horrible one time. We had a wounded guy on a litter, and the snipers were shooting at us. And there was 2 or 3 of them shooting at us. And if you're a sniper, you're pretty accurate. Well, we dropped the guy and dove into a hole and let the poor guy out there exposed. But what can you do? The 4 of us, and we tried to drag him in, but the hole wasn't big enough. But fortunately, the infantry guys took care of those snipers. So things like that happened every day. Anyway.
If there was one thing you could have the world remember about your generation and what you guys did, what would that be?
Well, there were no drugs, and everybody, there was a lot of honesty. There were guys going out there. There were no con artists to speak of. And we were all in the same boat. And we were all fighting for our country. And they said, "Sweating It Out" by Frank Irwin Austin Jr., U.S. Marine Corps. I sent this to my wife in a letter. People's version of what war must be is far from what my eyes can see. They think of heroes and thunderous guns, of bloody fights and battles won, diving planes and screaming shells blood flowing deep as battles swell. But what about before the fight? A stuffy ship, a sleepless night. The thoughts and memories, fears and doubts, idle hours just sweating it out. This part of war we also find as hideous as the battle grind. You gaze across the endless sea and wonder what the objective will be. Will I make it through this time, do you say? You're sure you will, but yet you pray. As terrible or glorious as war may be, the fears and horrors you may see, it's not just glory and battle shout, it's waiting, wondering, sweating it out. Yeah, I wrote that to my wife.
Well, if Garcia was here right now, what would be one thing you'd want to tell him?
You should have stayed in the damn foxhole. No, I don't know what I would have said to him. I really don't. But we got along good. He used to keep that Amtrack just beautifully clean and neat, and he had more guts in his little finger than most people have. And for him to, I was driving and the hatch was open and I was going to climb out, but before I got a chance to climb out, he jumped off and ran over and told the tanker to move and came back and hollered my name. Then an artillery shell hit right at his feet. And Charlie Vislaki, he actually made it. He was really a nice guy, but he thought he was going to be John Wayne for a while there. It changed his mind in a hurry. And I'm trying to think what else. I told you we had 130 of those Amtracks. We had 38 left. But like I say, they weren't all knocked out by enemy fire. They broke down, you know.
Were you able to bring any mementos home?
I brought home a Japanese battle flag. I got it on Saipan. It was in a tree. It was a thorn tree, a lot of thorns on it. And I climbed up, and it was up there waving. And I reached it, and as soon as I reached up and grabbed it, there was a wire attached to it. It was booby-trapped. But I hung on to it, and I dropped probably about 6-8 feet, and nothing happened. It tore it a little bit, but I still have that. That's probably the only thing that I have.
Do you still have that flag?
Yeah, I don't know where it is right now. It's in a trunk someplace with my blues up above. And it had different names on it. But what all the guys wanted for a souvenir more than anything else was the belt of 1,000 stitches. The Japanese made these belts, and each one of their friends would sew in a part of the belt, you know, and they called it the belt of 1,000 stitches, but I never saw one of them, but a couple of guys had them. I became quite close to a Navy guy on the LST I was on, and he said, geez, I wish I could go in with you guys. I said, don't volunteer for shore duty. I said, just do what they tell you, don't volunteer. Well, he volunteered and he came in and he got killed. I did a volunteer one time, and that's when we were going to go into Peleliu and blow up some of the corals so the small boats could get in. And that would have been a catastrophe. They would have killed all of us. So after that report came in, what happened, that, well, no, what they did is they decided not to do that. And I thought, you know, I'm not going to volunteer again. That's enough. Yeah, just do what you're told to do. A funny story is I taught hand grenades, how to lob a hand grenade. And I got a bunch of new recruits for the guys that were wounded. And I had a quart fruit jar with a big mouth on it. And I set it out on a piece of white rag. And I'm showing these guys how to lob hand grenades. And they were getting pretty close to it, but they were doing good. He said, "Okay, Sergeant, let's see you." I said, "No, I'm a lousy shot. If I went out on a basketball court, it would be 10 times before I'd make the basket. I never was any good." So they talked me into it, and I thought, oh, shit, I hope I come close. It went right down the mouth of that jar and broke the bottom out. I thought, wow. And these guys said, "Yeah, you're really good." And the way I got my stripes is I taught machine gun how to take them apart and put them together, how to fire them on the range, and so that's why I got my stripes for doing that,
Yeah.
So that was pretty good. We landed on the Marshall Islands. They said the weather was going to be good, but it was real stormy, and the waves were pretty high. When you drive those Amtracks, you got it in third gear, and as soon as you hit the coral, you got to shift it into second gear, but it has to be a smooth shift. You can't just jam it in. Well, some of them would jam it, and it would stall. Then a wave dumped them over with a whole platoon of infantry in them. And somebody told me, I don't know how true it is, but they lost 800 guys that drowned because the Amtrack got tipped over. I don't know how true that is, but that's what they said. But I had so much practice with them that I didn't have any problems. But I used to drive from here up looking out like you see the tankers there. But when we hit that beach on Iwo, that thing came down and I used the periscope. So anyway, that was 70-some years ago. Is there anything else you'd...
I think that about covers it. Have you gone back to Iwo at all?
Yeah, in '95 we went back, my wife and I, and I met the wife of the commander of Iwo Jima. He was a frail 90-year-old lady. I met her, and we wanted to go up to Mount Suribachi, and it was starting to get dark. And my wife said, "You were supposed to take us up to see the memorial." And he says, "You haven't seen it?" I said, "No, sir." He says, "Get in this truck." Well, my poor wife couldn't get in that truck. So they had a stepladder. So she got in it, and we went up there, and the guys had cigarette lighters so they could read. I forget what the inscription is on it. Anyway, and then we stopped off at Saipan, and I showed her that road that I ran down to get away from the Japanese when we were surrounded, and took her up, and that's the first time I saw that suicide cliff. And then they had jails there, the Japanese did, and if you recall Amelia Earhart, the lady that was pilot that was lost, and her initials were on the wall of that city jail. Whether it was true or not, I don't know. But the guide said it was her initials. I think it was Amelia Earhart. Yeah. So, yeah, I still got a stack of letters that I wrote her She kept them all.
That's cool.
And that was nice to have. It's nice to talk to you about it, and nice there's the people that are still interested in it. It's the war we won.
You saved the world.
Yeah, well, guess what? Can you imagine being on one of those little stinking islands, and you're a Japanese, and you wake up in the morning, and there's 1,000 warships surrounding your island? What they must have thought. A funny story I forgot to tell you about. When we were back at camp on Maui, they had, on the island of Maui, was where our battalion was stationed in our tents. There was a, what am I saying? Oh, there was a garbage truck, and it had 4 Japanese prisoners of war on it, and they were collecting garbage. And there was a Marine with a Thompson submachine gun guarding them. Well, I was watching them, and 2 of these guys got out to hand the trash cans to the guys in the truck. So the Marine climbed out. Well, when it's ready to get back in, the 2 Japanese prisoners of war got in, and he handed him his submachine gun. He took it, and I thought, holy crap. And then I thought, well, where the hell are they going to go, you know? They're getting fed 3 times a day, and they're treated really decent. So, but when he handed him his Thompson submachine gun, I almost crapped. God, that was the funniest thing that ever happened to me. It was a real shock at first, then when you figure it out. It isn't like one of their places where they beat the hell out of you, you know.
Dear God, in a few short hours we'll be in battle with the enemy. We do not join battle afraid or ask for favors or indulgence. We only ask that if you would use us as your instrument for freeing the world. Dear God, we don't know what our fate might be. We only ask that if die we must, we'll die as men would die without complaining or pleading, safe in the feelings that we have done our best for what we know is right. Dear God, watch over us, our families, watch over us in the fire ahead, and with us now as we pray to you. Move out.